Hello, love. Welcome to the Libran Key. My name is Elene, here for the highest and the greatest good of what I refer to as the Elsh Collective, empaths, light workers, starseeds, healers, awakened and awakening souls. Know that if this video, this message has found you, and or if you have found it, that there is something here for you. Timely yet timeless messages as always. That is always the intention that I put into these messages. All here for the highest and the greatest good of the Elsh Collective and the expansion of consciousness here on Mama Gaia, otherwise known as the Ascension process or New Earth, however you want to refer to it, okay? Today's message simply came as an answer with regard to what is in our highest and greatest good to hear right now, in terms of knowledge, in terms of support, in terms of activations and initiations I'm hearing, and also connected to some of the things we kind of tiptoe around. Things that we kind of walk on eggshells around, topics that we don't necessarily want to take a direct look at, but also topics that are sort of hidden beneath the surface is what Lazar is saying to me. He's here for this particular reading and this message. Lazar coming in on behalf of, he's referring to himself as being on behalf of the Lyran initiative. Isn't that interesting? He likes to come in and play with the words here because what's more important is you feeling into the frequency of what he's saying and what he's referring to as the Lyran mission. Okay? The Lyran mission for the highest and greatest good of humanity. I'm also hearing the liberation of souls. And this connects to how I like to sign off with every single video in love and liberation, always, okay? Here for the love and liberation of humanity, okay? We're going to talk today about the witch wound, the persecution wound, and understanding how this plays out in the day-to-day, in the mundane. That is all he has given me. He wants the cards to speak for whatever topic wants to come through at the moment, for whenever you find this reading, to address this collective pain body. He's referring to, when we talk about the pain body here, he's using that as an analogy as referred to in the work of Eckhart Tolle, okay? And I believe he speaks about this in A New Earth, if I'm not mistaken, where he's referring to the collective pain bodies amongst what Lazar is bringing through right now is lineages, our heritages. That's an interesting word that he's bringing through. What is the heritage? I gotta write that down because interesting. He's showing me here in Canada, we have what's referred to as, or what's called, heritage moments. I don't even know if they still exist. When I was growing up, you would see these on TV, and especially on the national broadcaster here, which is the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, essentially, is what it is. And, oh God, yeah, so interesting. He wants to address here the fact that there is a certain degree of programming and heritage. And when he's saying programming here is referring to indoctrination. That's why he's bringing in this energy of like a, you know, a TV channel or station, right? And he's also just saying, you know, it's in plain sight. We call it programming for a reason. Like when you get the program to your TV, right? Like your TV guide, and it tells you the programming for the week, okay? So these heritage moments are interesting because they all dealt with the history of Canada, and so they were called heritage moments. And he really wants to kind of sit with that and extrapolate that for a moment, because there's a play on words here with his story and history. And it's so funny because in Greek, the word for history is historia, and essentially it's a story. But the way that it plays out in English, when we take that word and we make it English as history, there's something revealing in that, even though in a sense it wasn't intentional. So there's a real emphasis and connection here with history being connected to his, being connected to the masculine, and this witch wound. Because essentially the witch wound is he's showing me a demarcation point where we went from being heavily embodied in the feminine and the feminine energies and the divine feminine to a patriarchal system, is what I'm hearing. That I'm hearing the words appropriated the feminine. So this is funny because that word appropriation gets thrown around a lot, and not always in the clearest, most well-intentioned way. Because that word he's showing me is also being used as a weapon by certain people, right? We need to really look at like how everything is on a spectrum here, including appropriation and what that means, right? And how it's being used. But in this specific way, when he's referring to the appropriation of the feminine, it is essentially a distortion of the feminine. That's how it's coming through, a warping of the feminine, and also a diminishing of the feminine in order to hide her in plain sight, hidden in plain sight. There's a lot of numbers I'm getting a lot of double numbers coming in with this. Like every time I kind of look at the timer here, even though I'm entrenched in what he's pulling through, I don't want to kind of get too distracted by the numbers, but he wants me to kind of make note of that. I'm getting a lot of 11s and a lot of 44s. So there's an energy here of like, there's a lot of activation with this. The energy of 11 being activation and portal energy. He's showing me the High Priestess and the energy of the pillars, okay? And this energy of the Justice card, okay, which he wants me actually to move to for 2 seconds here. Before I get actually into the cards, one of the decks I'm going to be asking through is the Giant Rider-Waite-Smith, Pamela's Genius. The card, he had me put all the major arcana into one group for this reading, and to keep the minor arcana in one group, specifically pertaining to these messages of how this witch wound plays out in the day-to-day and in the mundane. But he wanted me to point out that as I was putting the cards into these two groups, the Justice card was the one that remained on the top. It was the last one. And this is about redressing the balance of the divine feminine. And he's also showing me now the 11 here and the portals and the fact that this is an 11 card. This is key 11 in the tarot. What's interesting is I recently came across Adam Ellenboss's, I was watching the video on how to parent your Libran child. And it was a really kind of cathartic video for me to watch. I myself do not have a Libran child, but I was a Libra child, and in many ways I still am. And there was something that was pulling me to watch this video, and there was something that I felt it was really kind of a healing moment for me. And very much, it's funny, his work in general, and for a while I wasn't following what he was doing, but now I'm he came back up on my radar again, always in divine timing, right? And it was like I needed to see this video to just feel seen for a moment. And of course, he spoke about, this pertaining especially to people who have prominent Libra placements in their charts. It's not just if you're a Libra sun, but if you've got a Libra stellium, or if you have a Libra rising, right? Or if you just have a lot of activity. I would even go as far as saying in the 7th house. If you have a very active 7th house in your natal chart, it all applies, right? And one of the things that, he was speaking to was the fact that in ancient Greece and in that classical era, in Hellenistic astrology, Venus was associated with fairness, with justice. And immediately I was like, well, yeah, because it's Lady Justice, right? We always see depictions of justice being in a feminine form. And I always kind of correlate her to the way that in ancient Greek mythology, we had Aphrodite go into the direction of love, beauty, sex, relationships, okay? This very goddess-like energy as we sort of see it in a more modern lens today. And Athena, the energy of Athena, the goddess Athena, who was always to me a very masculine, 1111 on the counter, as I say this, a very masculine portrayed goddess. And the story goes, she sprung from the head of Zeus. That's how she was born. Aphrodite sprung from the sea, right? She was a mix of Uranos's semen, essentially, and she was the foam from which that sprang from, right? At least that's one of the stories that we have of how she was created. So it's really interesting to see how both these energies are connected to a masculine energy, and how there's a sort of delineation of that energy of Venus in Aphrodite and Athena, okay? So that's just a little kind of side tidbit coming in that's sort of coming together, another little piece that's sort of coming together for me as I read this, because the Justice card has always felt to me very Athena-like. But it is also the energy connected to Libra, and it's the energy connected to Aphrodite and Venus. And in Hellenistic times, again, Venus was very much about harmony. She was directly connected to this energy of justice. She was directly connected to fairness, armonia, as we say in Greek, or harmonia, right? The energy of all things, of an order, of the beauty of order. And Adam Ellen Boss goes into this really beautifully in that particular video where he talks about the order of the cosmos and how that is inherently the cosmos, the void, that is the feminine, okay? And how order must always serve the energy of creation or the heart. And this is where we've had this witch wounding happen, in that the feminine has been relegated to just following the order. And we've had 1313 on the counter as I say that. That is connected to divine feminine energy, right? And it's also the 4 again. And we had that 44 coming out earlier. So this is really, and it's a master teacher number as well, right? In what she has to teach us, in what this witch wound, this persecution wound has to teach us, in understanding this I'm hearing the word desynthesized and desynergized. So it's the negation of these things, of the feminine, And I don't want to get too, because I could go into a whole other thing with this about, okay, he wants me to touch upon this. One way that we can begin to understand very simply how this persecution wound and this witch wound, 1414 on the counter, temperance, the energy of healing here and alchemization. One way that we can begin to really see this in the day-to-day is to simply see how the divine feminine has been hidden in plain sight. How has her energy been hidden? How has her energy been warped to make it seem like she is submissive, to make it seem like she is not powerful, to make it seem in some way. And I realize that this, for some of us, especially as women, this is triggering. This can be very, very triggering, depending on where you are in the world, depending on the family you grew up in. Because not that many generations ago, this submission of the feminine was happening in families. I can look to my own lineage where, just to give you one really simple example, you know, when I look at my grandmother's generation and the generation of my great aunts, you know, if there were brothers and sisters, you know, and they're all siblings, brothers and sisters within a family, because the brothers were obviously men, they were allowed, and it was condoned for them to physically punish their sisters if their sisters weren't behaving in a way that they deemed suitable. So there was physical abuse happening amongst siblings in this way, and it was playing out day to day. Now, obviously, like, that is a more day-to-day heavy traumatic example to show you, but that wasn't that long ago. Like, that wasn't even 100 years ago. And so there's an energy of, okay, how does this play out in the day-to-day? Well, when I look at some of my great aunts and the way that they still, if we're connecting it directly to something, let's say like an example like this, it plays out in maybe their mentality, still thinking that where they outsource their own decision making and their powers to the men that are in the family, right? And that could still be happening in a family now, today, where dad has the last word, for example, or where certain divine feminine energies like play and having fun and creativity and dance are shunned, right? Because, I mean, what are you going to do with that? Or they're just looked at in terms of being something that we're very uncomfortable with. Very uncomfortable with. So these are just little examples, and we could go on and on and on about that, but I do want the cards to sort of speak for themselves here before I get into it. But one way that we can start to really do this and begin this process of alchemization and awareness and shadow work around this, because this is a collective pain body. So it exists within each and every one of us to some degree. And it even exists in the masculine, is what he's showing me. So even if you are a man, if you are masculine, you're going to see this reflected in some way on either end of the spectrum. You're also going to see it in the way that you relate to feminine energy. You're going to see it in the way you relate to the women in your life and the relationships you have with women, whether it's your sister, whether it's your mother, whether it's your wife, your spouse, your girlfriend, a friend who's a woman. It's the same thing, okay? So he wants me to get into it now. So I'm going to be working, like I said, with, we're going to be asking from just the minor arcana for the Rider-Waite-Smith, Pamela's Genius. He also wanted me to show the Six of Swords, because as I was, again, grouping the cards, the Six of Swords was right at the bottom of the deck. This is an energy of moving on from this, of healing, okay? It's interesting because we're dealing with swords energy here. So right away, I'm also seeing the energy of Athena, 111 on the clock. The energy of this masculine within a feminine, okay? And the way that we intellectualize, or the way that we analytically or mentally, the ideas and perceptions we have around the feminine, and moving and integrating those and bringing them into harmony. And I'm also getting the energy with this, with the water here in this Six of Swords, the energy of going deeper into the psyche. There's going to be activations around this for those of you who are open to that in this particular reading. I'm also going to be asking from the White Witch Tarot. This is just major arcana cards as well. with some very beautiful words of wisdom. I'm just going to put it that way from this particular deck, okay? All right, so let's start with he's showing me we should start with the minor arcana. So ways that we see this sort of witch wound playing out in the day-to-day, and how we can begin the process here of alchemizing the witch wound, okay? Which is essentially the disenfranchised energies of the feminine, disoriented energies of the feminine, disembodied energies of the feminine, and how they play out, okay? Obviously, it's very specifically related here to the feminine, and thus the persecution wound overlaps with this, okay? Because a lot of what has been persecuted historically here on Mama Gaia has a lot to do with the energies of intuition, creativity, play, and our direct connection to source, our direct connection to creator energy. So it's kept us separated, essentially. It's the energy of separation, right? You could honestly say that that's what the witch wound is at a much more deeper, overall, esoteric level. Any wounding, what he's saying to me, he wants me to pull that out. Yeah, any wounding that might be coming through for this, any wounding in general is separation. That's what a wound is. It's separation as opposed to unity. Knight of Wands coming out. So how might this play out in the mundane? Interestingly enough, he's saying to me distorted energies of the masculine. That's what he's showing me with this Knight of Wands. He's actually showing me, even though this isn't coming out in reverse, what he's showing me here, ooh, interesting. He's showing me kind of a shadow aspect of the Knight of Wands coming from an energy of fear, fear of the feminine. The Knight of Wands is also the second fastest moving knight in the deck. So he's more on the spectrum of action, 22 on the counter, okay, which this all has to do with divine feminine energy, trying to counteract this. The fact that we are in a very hyper-masculine, action-oriented society, the world at large, is what he's saying to me. But this is also in the Knight of Wands, whenever we have divine inspiration, or any kind of inspiration for that matter, when we feel inspired to take action on something. This is a way that we can counteract this witch wound. To trust ourselves enough, to feel embodied enough, and if you need to do the work of embodiment and nervous system regulation for this, that goes without saying, right? And again, at your own discretion, for your own highest and greatest good, knowing what that is for you and what that means for you, okay? Taking responsibility for that. That's another way that we can also, it's interesting because he's giving me here energies of how to identify that witch wounding, but also energies about how to counteract it. Eight of Pentacles at the bottom of the deck as I say that. So he's saying to me the work of embodiment, because embodiment is very much a divine feminine frequency. That's how it feels. The energy of embodiment, the energy of being in the body. Yeah. Four of Pentacles. A disconnected heart space. Another example of where the witch wound can show itself in the day-to-day. Holding on to things. He's even showing me the energy here of hoarding. Because hoarding has to do with not feeling safe in the body. And the witch wound is also directly connected to that. Not feeling safe in our bodies. Because part of the disconnect of the divine feminine also disconnects us from our bodies. And what the distorted masculine has done is got us to such a state of dysregulation in our nervous system that we are always outsourcing our power to someone else. And it's usually a male authority figure. And the way that he's showing me, okay, so this can play out in, for example, work situations, right? In the hierarchy of work situations, like I'm seeing corporate America. That just came, I mean, corporate Canada is not that freaking different, but I don't know why that specific one came out. Yeah, look, Knight of Pentacles at the bottom of the deck in reverse. So again, they're showing me the energy of disembodiment. I'm being shown that energy of disembodiment. And what's funny is that Lazar is pointing me again to the Knight of Wands in its functional aspect, not as dysfunctional or shadow aspect, right? As a way to remedy this Four of Pentacles. What's interesting here is that I'm seeing grounded, getting grounded for that. So this is about grounding your inspirations, the things that inspire you, like doing something physical with that. And you know, it's funny, even just the expression of your spirit and your soul through the physical, through feeling it in your body, for allowing your body to express what it needs to express. Like I'm being shown again, the energy of someone having a very good cry about something where there's some kind of release. I'm hearing chemical release even. And Lazar is showing me like this is like a breakdown. It assists in almost like a breakdown of the cells in the body, or like where the memory is stored in the body when we cry and when we release that energy. And also, he's pointing me to the fact that this is sitting on his crown. So there's also a kind of nod here, talking about the head, to this connection to source, this connection to God, this connection to spirit, whatever it is for you, okay? And one way that we can begin to remedy this wound or counteract this wounding or alchemize, essentially, this is what we're doing, alchemizing the wounding, is to have a daily practice in some way where you connect to spirit, to source, to God, or to your higher self. What does that look like for you? These are, he wants me to stop there because he doesn't want to make this too much or overwhelming, or because we're going to revisit these things again and again, but for the sake of this particular message in this video, these are some of the simple things that we can begin to do day to day to reintroduce, he's showing me the divine feminine aspects in our life. And one of it is that it's simply having a practice, a daily practice that can be very simple. Like, it's funny because this is, he's showing me four of Pentacles as like 4 minutes, like literally where you do this. Like, it doesn't have to be something that's super long. It could be a 15-minute daily practice. He's even showing me of introspection, where you connect to your heart, your crown, your ground, is what he's saying, the ground beneath you. In order to redress the balance of the feminine. He's showing me those heritage moments again. I'm going to ask now through the White Witch Tarot just to see what major arcana wants energy at a soul level collectively for this pain body. Oh, that's a lot, Lazar. He's showing me this one on the top. And he wants me to pluck one more or pop one more here. Yeah, we're at a collective level. Where are we at right now? Interesting. Yeah, oh my goodness. This was at the bottom of the deck when I opened the deck up. And I forgot to mention that. So I'm glad that, thank you, Lazar. Thank you, Spirit. So the Fool card here indicates that there are new timelines and trajectories being created. He goes in every moment, in every day. And it's funny because he's actually referencing the work of Bashar in this with regard to like every moment being a new timeline, every eternal moment, every moment that we are moving through now. And the possibility of shifts and changes happening at every moment. He's saying don't be deceived by thinking that it's already gone or lost. It's not. It is available to you in every single moment. Every single breath is what he's saying. He's showing me like a turn of the head. Okay, so he's showing me directionally, like there's so many directions and options. And he's showing me guided by the heart. That is the clincher. That is the direction you go in, being guided by this heart energy. And so much of it, going back to this Four of Pentacles, is connected to daily practice of connecting to the divine, to source within you, to God within you, to your higher self, okay? Look at what we've got coming out here. The sun and the moon. This reintegration of the feminine is also a reintegration of the masculine, is what he's showing me. There is so much reflecting, mirroring energy in this combination going on right now. And with that Fool coming out at the bottom of the deck, there's so much. Oh, wow. He's even pointing to the fact that, you know, with this shift, 1:23 on the clock as I say that. So this is progress, right? 1, 2, 3. This is an energy of progression. And he's pointing me to Pluto moving into Aquarius. And at the time of this recording, we are at 0 degrees Aquarius. Pluto is at 0 degrees Aquarius. And I think this happened on Tuesday. And Tuesday was just energetically, and I didn't even clue into it until after the fact. But Tuesday was quite interesting in terms of its energetics and just this energy of constant up and down in terms of essentially masculine, feminine energy. That's what was happening to me on Tuesday. It was like, you know, take action, don't. Like this is what your intuition is telling you, but then why am I like stopping myself? The mind was coming in to do certain things that day very vividly, to really show contrast. So this, he's showing me this combination of the Fool, the sun, and the moon as being new forms of consciousness permeating the divine matrix here on Mama Gaia, for us to see contrast and polarity much more differently than we did before. And that energy of polarity very obviously connected to the law of gender and the fact that there's this masculine, feminine principle in everything. And you know what's interesting is I'm seeing, again, there's so much mirroring in the images in these cards, okay? So you see how there's like, this feels like the energy of the higher self coming in to assist, okay? This also feels like polarity again. Look at the way that these figures are looking. One looking down, one looking out and up. We've also got that in the moon here, which is like a crab, which is very Cancerian in its energy too, which is the feminine, right? And Leo with the sun, right? And both, again, their correlation, Leo and Cancer, something with that. There's something going on with that, I feel, too, in terms of the timeline and energy. With Cancer and Leo season falling back to back on each other. And that's when we have the... like this is just coming off of the energy of the summer solstice here in North America and the winter solstice in, well, I would say Northern Hemisphere. I am in North America right now. And then the winter solstice in the Southern Hemisphere. And this directly being correlated again to the cycles of the sun, the earth, in relation, Mama Gaia, divine feminine, right? In relation to these sun energies that we often associate with the masculine. I know that it can be different in different cultures and different representations, but that's how it's coming through for this particular reading. And again, it's like we've got higher self, self, and this reflection of energies, guidance, guidance, the guidance of the divine, and trusting in our own guidance. Essentially, that is the key way that we alchemize this persecution wound, this witch wound. We learn to reconnect and trust our own guidance again. We learn how to trust ourselves again. Okay? I'm going to leave it there. That's that energy of this Fool. I'm hearing the universal child. And remember how when we're children, when we're young, we just kind of know? We know. Before our nervous systems get, all discombobulated, we just know how to follow our instincts. We know how to be intuitive. We don't question it. We know how to be connected. All right, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you, Lazar. Thank you to the Lyran Initiative for coming through for this. I thank you, beautiful soul, for spending your time, sharing your time and energy with us in this space. I'm sending you so much love wherever you are, in love and liberation, always.